Oh, I do have one question. What are the retrogrades in those? What do those mean? In Saturn and Jupiter.
Right. Okay.
First house and third house.
All right. So when Jupiter is retrograde, that makes the concrete things that Jupiter represents stronger. And let me give you some examples here. Let's see. So if you look at page 46, when we look at Jupiter, he represents a lot of things. He represents philosophy, religion, higher learning, wisdom. But these aren't the things that he makes stronger. What he makes stronger for a woman would be the ability to manifest a partner or a mate, because that's what Jupiter represents in a woman's chart. What he makes stronger is the influence of children in one's life. And if I recall correctly, you said, how many children do you have, Simona?
3.
So she's got 3 children. To me, that's a lot of children, because I don't have any. But it brings in this sense of having children. And do you mind sharing what your thoughts were about being a mother or a relationship?
I always wanted to be a mother. I want to have lots of children, more than 3.
Right. Yeah. So that naturally Jupiter's stronger because it's closer to the Earth, that's why she's all about it, you see. Now, the things that retrograde does create difficulties with are more the, what's the word? The more subtle aspect of Jupiter. Like Jupiter represents good luck. If you've got a really great Jupiter and it's head on, straight on, things will happen in your life more easily. You'll have just natural grace and luck. If your Jupiter is retrograde, that means that sometimes you probably think that things are going to work out, but they don't. It's like the luck is hit or miss. You're not quite always able to make it work the way you want it to. Jupiter also represents our wisdom and our ability to give counsel and get counsel, which means that it can be good, but when it's retrograde, again, it's hit or miss again. Sometimes you'll find teachings or sometimes you'll find philosophies that you think are great, but then you find out a little bit later on, no, that kind of was a bad way to go for a little bit. So it's sort of like this, the wisdom aspect is hit or miss. Does that make sense for you at all?
Not exactly in that way,
okay.
But in some way, like I have a real bias. I worked in hospitals as a hospital social worker for a number of years, and I have a real bias around allopathic medicine.
Okay.
So I don't tend to take advice from doctors even when they prescribe things. But then I'm a social worker by trade, so I've been in therapy most of my life. Something I really believe in. Right. And I try to follow the counsel.
Okay. So yeah, I see what you're saying. So it's to some things yes, but to other things not so much. And one of the neat things about her chart, I'm glad you mentioned that about therapy and social work. Her ascendant lord is in Scorpio, which is what that's all about. Hospice, doing social work, therapy. Scorpio is very much a psychological, therapeutic kind of a sign, and her ascendant lord is there, so that gives her a natural inclination towards it. Now, the ascendant lord is also in the 5th, and so the 5th represents education and children and so on. And so, was there much of your work involved with that aspect? Like, did you work much with children or education?
After I did social work, I did community health education.
Okay, was that for children?
Holistic health. No.
Okay, but it was education.
It was education. Okay. Mostly worked with older adults throughout both of those professions.
Okay. All right. Let's see here.
Oh, I was a juvenile probation officer for a short time.
Oh, you were? Okay. So for a little while, you were something like that. Yeah. All right. And that's always fun too. Another session I did with someone. The thing I said was, you probably have some urinary tract problems, kidney problems. And she's like, oh, no, never. And then 3 days later, she said, I was just happened to be in the hospital for a UTI. And I remembered that when I was a kid, I had all these sorts of things. So sometimes when you see it in a chart, it's just a little further back in there. Oh, and Saturn being retrograde, Saturn represents old things. So you did say you work with like a senior population, is that correct? So it can bring older people into your life. But Saturn also represents things like antiques. It represents being very much interested in collecting things of way back, or reading old stories, those sorts of things. Do you have any of that in your life?
I do. I have heirlooms from my family's, in my house that I'm very attached to.
Yeah.
And I study the Upanishads and the Vedas, so.
Excellent.
I was even her name. When you told me the other day your name was Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting to see all that. And it being retrograde, remember the retrograde status, from my experience, affects more of the subtle aspects of Saturn, such as one's ability to focus, endure is more of a physical thing. Usually when Saturn is strong on the ascendant, the person is very intense, they can get on with it, they can move forward and stay very focused. But when Saturn goes retrograde, this will give breaks. It will make it like you'll be right on it, but then something occurs and you come back to it, and it's this on or off kind of a thing. It's not just constant streamlined later beam. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wonder why I could stay on one.
Right. And that retrograde Saturn also adds to this Rahu, because we have to remember Rahu's the head that goes through the sky devouring things and it's always hungry. Rahu is also terrible about follow through, because he has no bottom. He has no end. He's really good at starting things, but as far as finishing things, that's not Rahu's strong point. So if you've got Rahu, usually that's more of an idea person versus a let's go build a community that's going to last hundreds of years sort of a thing.
It was just like more mine's in my kids component. When I first started having kids, I said to Michael, and they're going to have a bedtime, and they'll be in bed every night. And he's like, bedtime? Why that? And so I was like, oh, really? You never had a bedtime? What? And my kids never had a bedtime. I never enforced it. I was too exhausted, even though I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah.
We just all collapsed in the bed together whenever we were ready.
Right. And if you had Saturn there, you would be what you said. You would say, we're going to have bedtimes and so on, and it's going to be that way, and that's it. But Rahu there, it's you start it, but it falls through. There's a lot of restarting. So that's interesting.
It's interesting because I thought it was a matter of energy, inconsistent energy. Because I just run out of steam.
Well, you run out of steam because of Saturn and Rahu. Because they're like that. They can make a person need more rest. And that's this thing you got to remember is that when you've got that chart, getting more rest is not bad. It's not, oh, I have Rahu and Saturn here, so I need to muscle through it and get more energy. It's no, you've got Rahu and Saturn, so you have the constitution where you need to take a nap in the afternoon. I have Rahu and Saturn on the ascendant. And when I quit trying to fight the fact that I work much better when I get a little more sleep, when I take a nap in the afternoon, everything gets better. When I quit beating myself up over that, because Saturn says, no, you can do it. He says, you must muscle through. But when you acknowledge the truth of the matter, then your life gets a lot better too. So I would definitely say to you, get more rest. Yeah.
I love naps.
You're a cat in a sunny spot.
Yes, that's right. You need to be a cat in a sunny spot. That's good.